Thank you to Kenzie Bruce for his incredibly generous support on Patreon. Got a full stacked Phyrexian game today. Vishgraz versus Ixhel, Atraxa, and Elesh Norn. Now, I got through this game. I thought it was interesting enough to show all of you, but my recording software bugged for some reason, and the recording was just totally unusable. Couldn't get it back, so I've gone through the replay function on Magic Online here. The video will look a little bit balked, but it's the best way that I can get this video to you at this point. I do warn you as well that there are early scoops in this video as well, but I still think it's a fun one to watch. So we're keeping a pretty slow hand here, just hoping that my opponents go as slow as we do, and it turns out that they all just get out tap lands. We draw into a Mirex, which is the land that can make a Might for 3 and a tap, and we're just aiming for Cultivate on turn 3. Then we see Anafenza, Kintree Spirit, that looks to bolster and put plus counters on things. And the other two players don't do anything, so everyone is going slow as we hoped they would. And it is a Cultivate for us. I put a Forest into play tapped and a Swamp into hand here. Then Oketra's Monument makes a Warrior token every time our opponent casts a spell. Nature's Law for Atraxa, and it's a Cultivate for Ixhel as well. Then we draw into Glistening Oil to give one of our creatures Infect. So just drop a Swamp and I decide on our commander here. So that enters with 3 Might tokens, and we're looking to be the first ones to deal Infect to our opponents here. The mono white player for 2 mana drops a Lauren, and the only artifact they can blow up is a Might, so knocking us down to 2 Mights. But I notice here that he does miss a land drop, so that puts us a step further away from Elesh Norn, which I'm happy about because Elesh Norn obviously breaks our commander. And then our opponent drops a Rhea Ivor, and we see the second commander, Ixhel, Scion of Urza. We draw ourselves a Farewell, which could buy us some time later on, but at the moment looking to animate the Inkmoth Nexus. That can fly over the white stuff to the left. Our commander menaces its way through the middle, and the Mights go wide to the right. Obviously lose a Might to the blocks there, but now we can drop a land and we get down the teleportation circle, which will flicker our commander and make more Might tokens at the end of the turn. Noteworthy that our commander is now a 6/6 thanks to the Infect. Then Lauren taps down and has Ixhel and Elesh Norn draw a card, and that does allow him into a land, so can throw down a Felidar Retreat. Then we see Realm Walker from Atraxa aiming Phyrexians, so looking to cast Phyrexians off the top of the library. And the Rhea swings straight in towards us. We go for the blocks there, we can profit from blocks here. That doesn't have any means of evasion, just a 3/4 against a 6/6. So in response to blocks they go for Anguished Unmaking onto our commander. I suppose they were just trying their luck to get the Rhea Ivor through there. Then we see Infectious Inquiry from Ixhel, which is one of the spells that I'm really rating from the new sets. There's quite a few instants and sorceries that put an Infect counter on all of your opponents, and those are relevant. It does mean that you don't have to get through with combat to put Infect counters on your opponent, and you could just rely on those instants and sorceries and then sheerly proliferate them all to death and not even have Infectors and Toxic creatures in play. Just something to bear in mind. I haven't heard anyone waxing lyrical about those instants and sorceries, but really glad they exist now for Infect players. Anyway, they get down a Phyrexian Arena after that as well. We draw into a Cloud Shift for our commander, the Phyrexian Swarm Lord here. Doesn't do anything when it comes in, and barely does anything on the upkeep. Can get you a bunch of chump blockers, and if you just so happen to make it another turn cycle, you can start swinging in. It's more in here because it's a fun Infect creature really, but I don't have high hopes for it, to be honest. Anyway, we turn all our Mights in sideways towards the white player to get some more Infect over there because we're scared of Elesh Norn, and lose 2 Mights in the process. Our opponent loses a Warrior, and then the teleportation circle flickers the Swarm Lord, which does nothing. And then we see Elesh Norn just scoop on us, so I went on to ban this player after that because it's a damn shame that we lose out on players during a fun Phyrexian game like this. So then we see Atraxa go on to cast Defiler of Flesh, and then casting Elas El-Kor into that will allow it to put a +1 buff and menace onto the Ivor, meaning it can swing straight through here. So Ivor puts its own ability onto itself again. Yeah, the Magic Online replay feature's been a bit weird here, so I can't see who they attacked there, but I think it was us. Either way, they land and make 4 might tokens. Then we see Norn's Choirmaster from Ixhel. So looking to start proliferating, they can do it this turn if they swing in with the commander. And speaking of proliferate, there is a Grateful Apparition as well. And they do decide to swing in, hitting us for 2 infect with the Ixhel. But I think they mess up on the proliferate trigger here. The UI on Magic Online is really terrible, especially with proliferate, so if you click to proliferate someone, it actually doesn't change visually between that and not having them add a counter to themselves. So yeah, it's really weird. You just kind of have to click it once, hope it registered, and then say that you're done. What should happen is that the colours should change once you've said that you've successfully selected someone for proliferation, but anyway, that's clearly asking too much for Magic Online. So they do not proliferate correctly with the Norn's Choirmaster, but they do put us on 3 points of infect damage with the Ixhel, so that triggers for the first time and exiles a card from us. Then we get our first trigger with the Swarmlord, making only 3 tokens this time thanks to the Elesh Norn disappearing. And we draw into a land, so just slam that down straight away and decide on the Skithiryx here because we can hold it back as a blocker against the Ixhel. And we can swing in with it this turn. It does give itself haste with a single black mana, a flying 4/4 infect. So we go into the left at our Atraxa friend over there, put them on 6 points of infect, and then flicker the Skittles with the teleportation circle ready to block. Atraxa casting a mere convert after that, and then just deciding to scoop. He said in the chat that he's dead anyway, so just decided to scoop. Really selfish way to play. If you're dead next turn, then just take the attack from your opponent. It totally skews the game when people do this. Just because you're dead doesn't mean that you have to ruin it for everyone else. It's a totally selfish way to play, but I've said this over and over again on this channel. Can still be a fun game between me and my remaining opponent though. A Tyrannix Rex comes into play, an 8/8 with Ward 4, Trample and Haste, and Toxic 4. And our opponent just decides to swing in entirely here. And the Norn's Choirmaster, I know it's working because I've used it. It's just our opponent struggling with the UI on Magic Online, so does not proliferate another counter onto us here. We should be at 5 infect. So I decide to block the commander with the Skithiryx. They're going to proliferate with the Spirit either way. And then I totally misremember on the Tyrannus Rex as well. That has Toxic 4 as opposed to Infect. I'm playing it out like it's got Infect here, so I throw 3 insects in the way, expecting it to trample through 5 more damage, and we'll be left at 9 poison counters when you include all the proliferate and the rest of it. What actually happens here is Tyrannix Rex tramples through, hits us for however much damage gets through, and then puts 4 toxic damage onto us regardless. So I could have saved the insect tokens here and just had us on 8 infect. It would have helped me to go wide. So that's a potentially lethal mistake I made here. Obviously didn't realise it at the time though. So we end up at 8 poison counters. The Ixhel triggers again at the end of the turn, taking another card off the top of our library. And we draw into Gaia's Cradle, which is going to be a hell of a boon for us here. And I'm just seeing now, as I add commentary to this previous game, if we had the 3 insects that we just blocked with, needlessly, if we had them here, we could actually swing through for lethal here. Go in with all of our creatures. Our opponent blocks either the Skithiryx or the Swarmlord, and we get them for exactly 9 infect. Anyway, we decide to turn everything in sideways here. The Ixhel is a -2/1, so just going in the way of one of the big infect creatures, and we get our opponent up to 7 infect only. But the plan here is to go for the Farewell, hence the reason that I turned everything in sideways. So play down the Gaia's Cradle and play the Farewell. I exile creatures and graveyards here. And then we tap out into our commander, Vishgraz. We can obviously flicker with the teleportation circle. Decide to leave the Phyrexian Arena in play because I wanted to keep the teleportation circle and really help the chance that we were going to go wide on our opponent next turn. But it turns out, unfortunately, our opponent had a White Sun's Twilight, putting X into 7. So we're going to make 7 might tokens here. And it's looking pretty dire for us at this point. But we play it out, see what we top deck into. And it's just a shock land, unfortunately, so we drop the shock land. I'll replay my commander just for the fun of it. I'm hoping my opponent might forget that mites can't block. Flicker our commander again, get 3 more might tokens. And we see our opponent throw down a Vanquisher's Banner, putting a +1 buff on all the Phyrexians in play, on our opponent's side of the field anyway. And then we see another one of those spells, Infectious Bite, that puts a poison counter on all of your opponents, and it will fight. I think it's a one-sided fight as well on that. So gets a Might out of the way, and then just turns in sideways at us. There's nothing we can do here. And our opponent goes wide on us, takes us down to 10 life and 16 infect, so yeah, it turned out to be a pretty fun game in the end. It's a shame that I threw the win away there, but I was just thinking about Toxic all wrong apparently. I had it in my head that that Tyrannus Rex was going to deal a bunch of infect damage to us, when clearly it was just going to deal Toxic 4, so should have just taken the hit and left the tokens in play there. But it was a fun game regardless against the other Phyrexian decks. Hopefully you all enjoyed it as well. If you want to see more from Vishgraz, then let me know in the comment section. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.